Learning English always felt like an impossible mountain to climb. I struggled to find confidence and often avoided speaking altogether. One quiet afternoon, I found myself in a small cafe. The familiar scent of coffee and the warm hum of conversation created a calming atmosphere. I had my notebook open, practicing a few phrases I wanted to memorize. My goal was to improve, even if only a little, by reviewing words over a cup of tea. The sound of the door opening broke my concentration. A man entered holding a folded map, his eyes scanning the room with a mix of hope and uncertainty. In that moment, I had no idea my day was about to change. What felt like a small encounter would leave a lasting impact on my journey with the language. The cafe was my favorite place to relax and practice. It was small but filled with charm, offering the perfect mix of quiet corners and friendly chatter. That day, I sat by the window, watching the late afternoon sun filter through the glass. My notebook was open, filled with scribbled notes and half-finished sentences. When he walked in, he looked a little out of place, like someone far from home. The map in his hand and the puzzled expression on his face made it clear he wasn't local. He glanced around before approaching the counter. His body language showed hesitation, as if unsure what to do next. I couldn't help but feel curious. What brought him here? And more importantly, would I have the courage to interact if the opportunity came? Just as I was contemplating this, he turned and noticed me sitting alone. His eyes seemed to light up as though he'd found exactly what he was looking for. In that moment, I froze, unsure if I was ready. The next few seconds felt like an eternity as I waited to see what he would do. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm and polite. His accent was unfamiliar, but clear enough for me to understand. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure how to respond. My heart raced, but I managed to look up and meet his gaze. "I'm looking for the central square," he continued, holding out his map. His smile was kind, encouraging me to try. I glanced at the map, recognizing the spot he pointed to. My mind scrambled for the right words, hoping I could form a proper sentence. "Go straight," I said, my voice shaky, "and turn right." I motioned with my hands to make the directions clearer. His smile grew wider as he nodded. "Thank you," he replied, his tone filled with genuine appreciation. I felt a small rush of pride. Even with my limited vocabulary, I had managed to help. As he folded the map, he asked, "What's your name?" His question caught me off guard, but I answered softly, "Chloe." "Nice to meet you, Chloe," he said, extending a hand. Those words stayed with me, marking the start of an unexpected connection. His words echoed in my mind, making me realize how simple phrases could create a connection. "Nice to meet you" sounded so natural, yet it felt like a milestone for me. He didn't seem to mind my mistakes or hesitation. Instead, his calm demeanor gave me the courage to continue. I tried repeating the directions again, this time with more confidence. "Go straight, then turn right at the big fountain," I said, adding more detail to help him. He nodded and repeated my words back to me, as if to confirm he understood. His patience made me feel less nervous. For the first time, I noticed how rewarding it was to step outside my comfort zone. Speaking, even imperfectly, was better than saying nothing. Before leaving, he thanked me once more, this time saying, "You're very helpful." That simple sentence felt like an achievement, a sign that I had succeeded in communicating. As I watched him walk away, I couldn't stop smiling. The interaction might have been brief, but it left me with a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in a long time. As he disappeared into the distance, I replayed the conversation in my mind. Those few words exchanged had felt monumental. Hearing him say, "You're very helpful and nice to meet you," was more than a compliment. It was proof that I could communicate. Even with my limited English, I realized that my fear of making mistakes had held me back for so long. But in that brief encounter, every word, every gesture had meaning. That day marked the first time I truly felt connected to someone through a language I was still learning. It was more than a small victory. It was a turning point. Leaving the cafe, I promised myself that I would keep practicing, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. If such a simple exchange could leave me with this much joy, imagine what more practice could do. That experience taught me something invaluable. Learning a language is not about perfection. It's about trying, even when it feels scary. I realized that understanding comes from context, patience, and effort. Every small conversation is a step toward fluency. From that day forward, I practiced with more determination, knowing that mistakes were part of the process. Each word I learned wasn't just vocabulary. It was a bridge to connect with others. Whenever I feel discouraged, I think back to that moment. It reminds me that courage and kindness are the true foundations of communication.